outside looking in, we speak about how exactly these mixed signals are affecting EU-Philippines trade and investment relations with Gunter Taas, the president of the ECCP. Good to have you back with us, GT. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Kathy. Good to be back.
All right. So is that the overriding mood now among the prospective investors here in the Philippines?
I think it has been in mood for quite a while. And if you see these mixed feelings, this flip-flopping around, one day it's good, one day it's bad, I think it's a ripple effect we see everywhere else in the world as well.
And you haven't gotten used to it? I mean, the European businessmen, I mean, it's about nearly 2 years already.
Well, it is, and it isn't. You know, it's a double-edged sword. And if you look at bringing more business in, as I said last week, it's getting increasingly more difficult to attract new business. While we're trying to retain the business that we have here, we still want to bring in more business from Europe and from the rest of the world.
There is difficulty in actually retaining those that have already set up shop.
Yes, I mean, we have been talking to quite a number of companies now, especially with Train, revoking some of the benefits that people came in here when they set up, or they got when they set up. So yeah, it doesn't give the right signals to the industry.
So who have left so far?
No, so far nobody has left, because most of the things have not been implemented. It's still under study and under discussion. So, but we'll see. But people do start get concerned.
Now, I know that you've been to a meeting earlier this week, with the EU ambassadors here in the Philippines. I mean, I gather you talked about the entire political situation. How far-ranging was that conversation, and exactly what did you talk about?
Well, actually, we referred to it as our annual meeting briefing with the EU ambassadors. So all the EU ambassadors that have setups in the country do usually...
Around 15 of them,
15,
yes,
yeah.
out of the 22.
Correct. So they show up, usually all of them, and with their trade counselors, because we talk about trade-related issues, we talk about political issues. It's usually close to a meeting wherein we basically update the ambassadors as well, what we do at the European Chamber throughout the entire year, the different programs that we run, and what have we done 2017 and what we do looking forward to 2018.
What was the mood like compared with last year? I mean, considering the concerns that you've had have run on for like 2 years now.
The sentiment was pretty much the same. Again, mixed bag of goodies. But by and large, everybody still remains positive in the hope that things will change and that we move forward, despite the fact that we see a withdrawal of the government on different aid packages. But those are things that we started discussing. So how can we retain those things, and how can we continue the aid packages to the Philippines? Probably no longer government to government, but government to business.
So it's really the aid package. That's what really dominated the conversation, and how to continue that in spite of the formal rejection.
But that was one of the major subjects, of course. But again, we also had a speaker from Singapore, from EU ABC, which stands
Chris
for
Humphrey.
Chris Humphrey.
He's the EU ASEAN Business Council president.
No, he's the managing director there.
Yes, and he came here a couple of months ago. I know I spoke with him, but what was his update? I know that he oversees the ASEAN, so he could perhaps give a comparison of how the ASEAN is comparing with the Philippines in terms of an investment destination.
That was the reason why we've invited Chris, because usually it's us giving the ambassadors the impression of how we see the Philippines and business in the Philippines. So it was good to see it from an ASEAN and from a global perspective, and we're not ranking that well.
Not that well, like how badly then?
No, well, as benchmark, we took, or Chris took Vietnam, because similar size market, and checked on how much FDIs do we get and how much business do we get, and we're losing out fairly badly to Vietnam.
In what way? I mean, is it accelerating? I mean, the political structure isn't the same. I mean, it's a closed market, and we're very much open, and so we're being compared to Vietnam.
No, because the comparison to Vietnam was just simply because of the fact that it's the same market size. So not for topography or anything else. It was just really the market size. And we have a number. I'm not sure if you have any slides prepared, but we just looked on how does the Philippines compare to the other 6 Asian markets, the bigger ones, and we looked at availability of competitively priced labor, where we ranked number 1. We looked at availability of skilled labor, which ranked number 1, which I disagree with the ranking, but again, it is what the survey showed. Then ease of recruiting labor from abroad, also we ranked number 1 for the, I think, 3rd year in a row. But then if it goes to business-friendly customs relations, we've slipped to the 6th place, so 6 out of 6. When it's ease of import importing goods, we're 5 out of 6. Regulatory regime, we're 5 out of 6. Fiscal structures, administrative cost, and infrastructure, we all rank 5 out of 6.
That's a big slippage.
It is. It is.
So how did the conversations go then? I mean, we're looking at the ASEAN now. I mean, the European businesses here possibly wanting to expand in the Philippines, but see a more competitive structure beyond the Philippines, like Vietnam.
But that's, Kati, if you look back at the discussions we've had in the past, that's what I've always said. The more we immerse into ASEAN, the more we have to stay competitive as the Philippines, because while ASEAN is a good thing to happen within the market itself, but to attract foreign investment from outside, people do look at different things at different markets and make a serious guess at the end, so which country would I want to put my money in? And here, unfortunately, even with the new train packages, it does send very strange signals, because now you brought companies in, you give them benefits to set up here, and then suddenly withdraw the benefits. So that never sits very well with foreign investors. So we have to really weigh off those things and see how do we move forward, how can we be competitive within the ASEAN market.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, the list that you just pronounced, I mean, 3 out of 6. We're so competitive. Labor costs, labor mobility, that can keep us competitive, won't
Sure.
it? Or is that not enough?
Sure, it is. But again, if you then look a little bit deeper, I mean, these were just pretty much very open, pretty much political issues. If you then look at the future challenges that we have, you look at the geography of the Philippines, we are way off. We're an island in the middle of nowhere compared to, for instance, Vietnam, which is on the mainland, so it's easier infrastructure-wise. If you look at the amount of natural disasters we have here, typhoons and whatnot, if you look at the geopolitical issues, if you look at domestic politics, if you look at the relation the EU has with the Philippines in comparison with other ASEAN countries, if you look at the level of corruption and the state of the infrastructure, if you factor all of this in, we are certainly at the lower end of the choice for people to come here.
All right, so is there a sort of pivoting away from investing more in the Philippines and into Vietnam? Is that the kind of maybe signal that you got from the conversations with the EU ambassadors?
That's not from the EU ambassadors, but if you really look at the figures and if you look at the rise of Vietnam, there's certainly more investment going into Vietnam than to the Philippines. We have I'll be in Vietnam from Sunday to Wednesday because I want to understand what do they do different. So we do a little bit of shopping around to understand what the underlying issues are. What do they do better than we do? We also visit the European Chamber there to see, compare some notes and compare some figures, so we understand what do we need to do, how do we position ourselves in order to attract more.
So there are plans, so exploratory stage at this point, from the Philippines heading on to Vietnam.
Yes.
And that's going to be a 3-day visit.
Yep.
Next Friday, you got to tell me more about that
yes,
visit.
I will
Take
do that.
me home some Vietnamese coffee, would you?
Sounds good.
All
I'll
right.
bring it.
Thank you, and have a good weekend.
You too, Kathy. Thank you very much.